Axşamınız xeyir əziz qonaqlar və dostlar, which means hello, good evening and welcome. I'm honored here to present the Buta Festival of Azerbaijani Arts, and I would like to tell you briefly what it's all about. We created this festival because from our perspective, the best way to get to know Azerbaijan is through the arts. Music, poetry, film, and photography give meaning to the experiences of Azeris and the life of our country and the fiery spirit of our people, better than a speech or a book ever could. I'm hopeful that by the end of the festival, on March the 7th next year, you will all agree with me. We even have a food festival taking place at the South Bank Center next week, so you're all welcome. Over the next few months, you will have the opportunity to attend performances by Azerbaijan's most celebrated musicians, artists, poets, photographers, and special guests, including renowned violinist Gidon Kremer, celebrated conductor Ion Marin, the artist Tahir Salahov, award-winning jazz musicians Shahin Novrasli and Isfar Sarabsky, and many, many others. As some of you may know, Azerbaijan is known as the land of fire. We were given this name by the many explorers, from the Nobel brothers to the Rothschilds to Marco Polo, who crossed the Caucasus in search of black gold and were greeted by burning hillsides where methane pockets in the ground create continuously burning gas fires. Our natural resources have been a source of prosperity for my country since the 3rd and 4th centuries, and even today entrepreneurs from the East and West continue to invest in Azerbaijan as they seek solutions for 21st century's global energy demands. I believe that we have embraced the name of the land of fire because we know it means more than burning hillsides. It is about the fiery spirit of Azeris. Thank you very much, and floor to Rena Effendi and Hamid.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming here. So, as Flora said, I'm Hamid Ismailov. I'm from the Central Asian and Caucasus. Louder? Okay. So, I'm Hamid Ismailov. I'm from the Central Asian and Caucasus Service of the BBC World Service, and I'm representing mostly radio here. So, and I'm very happy to have tonight here Rena Effendi, who represents photography. I somehow find, similarities between radio and photography in immediacy of those two arts. Radio is very immediate to what's happening in the world, and photography is very immediate to what's happening in the world. Though, thinking about that, I think that photography benefits from the eternity as well. You know, it's immediate, at the same time it's eternal in a way, unlike radio. So therefore I'm very, very happy to have today Rena in front of me, and I'll be asking on your behalf, and then you will be asking your questions as well. I didn't know Rena before this evening. What I knew about her was this book, which she published recently, and this book is the book of her photographies, and it's devoted to Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline, the life around this, along this pipeline. It came out recently, so you can buy copies here, as far as I understand, yes, of this book, and I highly recommend this book. It's a wonderful book of wonderful photographies which tells the stories of people living along this Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline.
Thank you.
Yes. And I've seen the website of Rena, but she is much wider than in her interest and her pursuits than just this book. She has got photographies from a zone of conflicts, from Afghanistan, from Iran, from Russian mining cities, lots of interesting photographies about the human life on our planet today. But mostly we will be talking about this book tonight. And let me start with Rena herself. So I would like to ask, first of all, to introduce Rena herself, how she came to photography, because as far as I understood, she came to photography quite recently, in the beginning of the 21st century, in 2001, if I'm not mistaken, yes? So how did you come to photography? Tell about yourself.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming, and I just wanted to thank again Nasib and the Buta Festival for organizing these events for me. I'm very happy to be here in London presenting the book. Your question, I often say, I mean, when people ask me this question, I often say it was my frustration with the brush that led me to photography. Because I started as a painter, and I thought this would be, you know, my chosen medium of expression. But then I realized how tedious it was for me, how I had to be in the same room and really sweat over it. And a lot of people say the photographers are lazy painters. So I suppose I'm a lazy painter. And I was painting for about a year and a half or 2 years before I realized that it's not for me. And I picked up a camera and I just couldn't put it down. So that's how I started.
So what was your first project then? So what was your first photography about?
Actually, it's a good question because it's actually in the book. My first project was I literally walked out on the street of a neighborhood that was very close to where I used to live. And I looked around and I saw a lot of changes. The neighborhood was changing every single day, being sort of swiped away by new luxurious construction brought by the oil money. You'll see the pictures later. So I started photographing the faces of the people that were living in this neighborhood because they were disappearing. And I just kind of, I was hoping to preserve them somehow on film, on paper. And that was the first project was this project on a neighborhood called Mahalla.
Mahalla.
Yes.
Mahalla.
Mahalla is an Arabic name for a neighborhood.
Yes, for the neighborhood. Talking about Mahalla, 2 years ago I had a chance to cross Azerbaijan from Baku to Georgia. So I crossed the whole Azerbaijan. And initially, I was thinking, so Azerbaijan is one of the sort of wealthiest post-Soviet countries now, with all this flow of petrodollars into the country, and I was expecting, you know, flourishing rural side of Azerbaijan. So, but the contrast between the center of Baku and the rural Azerbaijan was striking, you know. It reminded me sort of, you know, rural areas of Central Asia, which I considered far, far behind of Azerbaijan. But it reminded me very much the sort of Central Asian landscape and sort of rural areas. So you've started apparently from this Mahalla. When you decided to go along this BTC line?
Well, actually, you mentioned the word contrast. It's a key word when it comes to Azerbaijan. It's really it's a huge contrast between what is happening in Baku, in my city where I was born and where I grew up, and what's happening outside. There are a lot of social challenges outside the city of Baku, and unfortunately, right now, the pace at which the money, the new money that comes in, the oil money, the pace at which it spreads around these areas is very, very slow. Maybe this is the nature of all, you know, oil industry related development. I'm not sure, but yes, Baku is booming. It's incredible what's happening there. You will see. And in the villages, some people still live without gas, without, you know, without water supply inside the house and things like that. So when did I start thinking about going out? The way this whole book came about is I realized that every story I started doing in Azerbaijan somehow was related to oil, because oil is the main story of my country. It's you know, it's sort of a huge cliche, and very often I hear from journalists and you know, foreign journalists coming in and they want a photographer, and you know, I don't even have to ask them why are you here. Everybody is doing the oil story. So I realized that the story of the refugees and of the conflict has some relation to oil. The story of even, you know, Irish pubs. They came with oil. We never used to have them, you know. The lager flowed in to Azerbaijan along with the oil in the pipeline. So everything I did had some relation to oil, and I realized that it would all fit in this one big volume, in this one book. And this is when, it was about 2006 when I realized that I should make this journey along the pipeline, sort of a symbolic journey. You cannot see the pipeline, it's buried underground. But there are these stories above ground that are, you know, sometimes shocking, sometimes, you know, to me it's beautiful, but it might be shocking for some people. But yeah, collecting all these stories along the route, you here on the map, you can see, you see the sort of the curving of the pipeline. You see how it's avoiding some of the areas. So, I mean, it's a very politically sensitive project. It's a very interesting project. It's been nicknamed as the new great game. So, and it's affecting the lives of millions of people along the way. So, it was fascinating, the trip itself.
I'm sure that our friends in the audience, they are aware and they know about the BTC line. They know the capacity of this line, which sort of transports 1 million barrels of crude oil from Azerbaijan via Georgia to Turkey. I'm sure that they know that the capacity of this pipeline, that it brings 1% of oil, of the world oil, you know, 1% of world oil is transported by this BTC line. So the length of this is one of the biggest, maybe the second biggest pipeline in the world, etc., etc. But what I liked about your sort of, you know, description is one thing about the sort of the, you know, return flow of Irish pubs, and we are talking very much about the sort of, you know, the oil, yes, the oil sort of flow to the west. But we are not talking about the money flow to the east, for example, you know, which is huge amounts of money are coming invisibly back to Azerbaijan. So you worked in the oil industry yourself.
Absolutely.
So was it helping you in any way in your trip to BTC?
Well, okay. First of all, I think as a young woman, I started working at the age of 19. I was working as a translator for BP. And as a young woman of that age, it was very lucky for me to get a job so young and be independent from my parents. And that sort of paved the way for my future and how I am, you know, this sort of gaining independence. And I think, me personally, I also benefited from the oil boom. There are people who are benefiting. There is a emerging middle class, and definitely it brings a lot of benefits. But there's a very big chunk of population who doesn't. And this story is about these people. It's about these people who are sort of left behind the boom and who are not sort of included in it. Unfortunately, by virtue of simply being outside the capital city or being completely unrelated to all of this development here, the whole project started with a commercial assignment. I got a commercial assignment from BP to go along the Azerbaijani segment of the pipeline and record sort of the social responsibility project, document the social responsibility projects that they were doing, photograph the people, you know, in these communities that they're working with, and they are doing some great things. There are some great projects being done by BP as well, but it's just not enough. The challenges are so vast that you can't cover, and it's not really the job of BP to fix the problems of the country. The job of BP is to make money, right? As this is the nature of business everywhere. So I went along with BP and I looked at life outside and through the window of a car, and I realized that there are so many things I wanted to document that I couldn't simply on that assignment. So I promised myself I want to go back and I want to make this journey independently on my own, without any agenda, any commercial assignment, no obligation to anyone, and I did. So I just simply went back to those places, and I decided to do it all the way to Ceyhan, all the way through Georgia and Turkey, and that's how this trip happened.
I know that you've prepared your presentation, but before going to the presentation, can I ask you a question? So I told about the sort of, the similarities between radio and photography, about the immediacy. So you are now on the sort of radio side. You are telling the story without showing the pictures. What was the most striking story from this book which you remember?
I mean, there's so many stories along the way, so many people I met. I guess, okay, one of the most striking stories, it was sort of an incredible effect that I didn't expect that, the pipeline could have such an effect on people's lives. In Turkey, right at the end of the pipeline route, in a small fishing bay of Yumurtalık, I met a group of fishermen. And when I talked to them, they told me the story of how basically they completely lost their fishing income because of the pipeline security. They couldn't go into the waters of the bay anymore. They had to go far away into the sea. There was not enough fish, so they had to drop their nets. And what was incredible about that there was a community of about 200 fishermen that dropped down their nets and went looking for other employment, and they ended up getting a job as toilet cleaners in Iraq on the military base. And to be a fisherman in Turkey and then end up being a toilet cleaner in Iraq, I mean, this is how this whole thing completely dramatically changed their life. And to me, that was just, that was just an incredible story, like a human story, that happened there. So, and one of the major ones, because it affected a big community, quite a large community of people.
Can I suggest now to see the presentation?
Sorry about that. When I look up the pipe dream in the Webster, I read that the pipe dream is a fantastic hope that is regarded as being impossible to achieve. So my story is about the people, ordinary people of Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. All of them are linked by this oil pipeline, and they're linked by their fading hopes for a better future. Azerbaijan, the country where I was born, is where oil history actually began. The name of the country, Land of Fire, derives from the eternal flames that seeped from the earth, and those same flames that inspired Zoroaster, who launched the world's first monotheistic religion. It was also this same fire that lured investors such as Nobels and Rockefellers to come to Azerbaijan and explore the onshore fields, oil fields surrounding Baku. And this old oil of the Nobel era brought a new development to the city of Baku. What used to be an eastern caravan city expanded into luxurious European mansions. Oil barons with all this new oil money built lush palaces, theaters, and opera for their wives and lovers. This new culture really burst in, and it burst in through the medieval gates and all the way into the industrial age, and thrived for quite a long time before the Soviets came and destroyed it. With the breakup of the Soviet Union, however, the neglected oil infrastructure on shore started to crumble. This turned the environment of Baku and the surrounding villages into a wasteland of oil lakes and dump yards. As a result of that, people who live in those villages got trapped in their historical circumstance and without the ability to walk away. In September '94, a contract was signed between the Azerbaijani State Oil Company and a conglomerate of international oil companies led by BP. This contract was hailed as the contract of the century, and it brought an influx of foreign money and culture into the capital city. Baku in the war-torn 90s was a ghost city, where actually there was a military curfew that prohibited the residents being on the streets past midnight. Today, however, the city where the cafe life used to be limited to men drinking tea it's absolutely vibrant with nightlife. Lager is flowing in Irish pubs, and foreign oil workers go to bars with girls in high heels and stomp disco floors at night.
Sleep on that, 'cause I've got a plan. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. It's true. I saw your face in a crowded place, and I don't know what to do, 'cause I'll never be with you.
This Georgian sex worker I met in the bar, she actually followed the route of the pipeline in reverse. She came to Baku from Tbilisi. She was lured by the oil money, and she ended up as a live-in lover of an oil worker from Halliburton. I suppose too much money came in too fast, and this money brought around an unregulated construction boom that forever changed the face of my city. In 2002, when I first started photographing, I discovered a historic neighborhood of Mahalla. It's one of the oldest areas in the city. Mahalla had its own diverse and resistant culture, and I call it a bastion of poverty and tradition. Here, oil workers of the noble area used to live, and now they're mullahs, beggars, pigeon keepers, and small-scale traders and repairmen. All these residents, these impoverished residents, they were swept by the new construction boom, and they were forced to sell their homes and to businesses and abandon their traditional ways of life. As the Mahalla homes and shops were raised to accommodate soulless high-rise apartment buildings, the residents struggled with the demise of their neighborhood. Who died 3 years after I took this picture. He was a pilot in the Soviet army, and after he lost his vision, his pension wasn't enough to support his needs. So he spent every day on the street reciting both the Quran and the Bible while begging for alms. I was walking down the street in Mahalla once, and this man came up to me and asked me if I could take a picture of his dying mother. I entered the house, and for some reason I held my breath. It must have been a subconscious reaction because I was afraid to breathe in the room where a dying woman's wheezing made the air heavy. When I look at this picture today, I think of Mahalla vanishing. The BTC pipeline goes through a very volatile region, and it avoids, it skirts conflict zones like someone walking on a frozen pond. I mean, there's Nagorno-Karabakh, South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and Chechnya. All these battlefields have produced an abysmal nation of war victims. These people who continue living in inhuman conditions, in train cars and shells of buildings, caves and mud huts, and their hopes of ever going home are fading. This place I photographed, the neighbors call it Titanic because they compare it to a sunken ship beyond recovering. Refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh live here in their apartments that they built from cardboard and wooden planks, and they make these dangerous spider webs of electric wires, and they steal electricity from the street. The smell of that place, poisonous fumes go up and into the air from a sprawling dump outside, and open sewers contaminate the basement. The building is completely hazardous and totally uninhabitable, and the children are in danger every day. They walk in unlit, ghostly hallways. They fall through the cracks in the floors. Azeris, Georgians, Turks, Kurds, Alevis, Greeks, and many others, just ordinary people with shared histories and shared unique cultures, all touched by the pipeline, so that Europe can be warm in winter. In Marneuli, in Georgia, I went to a wedding of a half Armenian and half Georgian bride and an Azerbaijani groom. It was a big mix, a big Caucasian mix, a truly multi-Caucasus affair. It was celebrated by wild dancing, and they laid out a feast and tents, and there was also, I observed a sequence of really bizarre, ethnically disoriented rituals. The groom was walking with his friends and swaying with candles, holding handkerchiefs in their mouths, and then they had this ceremonious sheep beheading, and I just remember very clearly the bride in her Cinderella-clad food stepping over the stream of blood on the ground. Then they brought in this extraordinary wedding altar, and what it was a sugar cane decorated with fruit and Snickers bars and fake dollar bills, and on top of that there was a vodka bottle. What I saw last at the wedding, there was almost a flickering image of a little girl in a white bridal dress. She was swinging by the pots of food, and her silhouette was illuminated by the light from the cooking fires at night. We all know that the price of oil changes daily, and at the same time our need for oil grows exponentially. I guess what I want to say is that this multi-billion-dollar pipeline has a human cost, and this cost is not measured in dollars. It's measured in numbers of refugees, in poverty indices, and in loss of jobs and human dignity. I know that my story can't really force governments or oil companies to be more responsible to the individuals whose lives they're played with, but I mean, it can hopefully inspire people to look beyond corporate and government propaganda and hear the voices of the people calling out for help. In the end, though, I think it'll be what it is. It's just a photographic document. It's a testimony to these individuals and their stories in the face of change, relentless change.
Thank you very much
Put the map
for
back.
the presentation. Yes, we were talking about the contrast. During your presentation, there was an Azeri Mugam song, and I remember when I went to see Alim Kasimov, the world-famous Azeri singer, at his home. He lives in Mahalla in Baku, and you know, the place where he lives is so contrasting with his world fame, you know. And I was thinking about this contrast constantly while watching your presentation. We're talking about contrast. Is it because of that your pictures are black and white?
This is a very aesthetic question.
Yes.
I guess probably not. I started the story in black and white and with Mahala, and I went to other places and continued. It's just better not to mix color and black and white in one story. According to me, this is just my aesthetic sort of preference. But I suppose I wanted to make more of a psychological portraiture and kind of abstract from all color and have, you know, more focus on the story. But I mean, it's all aesthetics. It's just that it's a big question mark. I do a lot of work in color now, so it's just it happened that this work is black and white, and it had to stay black and white to the end for all the 6 years of the project. But there is no philosophical reason behind it.
Because it's black and white, I don't want to oversimplify my question, but is the BTC pipeline curse or blessing? After this book,
I'd say it's both. It is definitely both, because, I mean, it is good for the overall good of the country. It does bring money to the budget. It does increase our importance, geopolitical importance in the region, and sort of overall it is a good thing, of course. This book, however, this work is about the people who, as I said, are left behind and who don't benefit from the pipeline. So what I'm showing here today is not a full picture, and it's not meant to be a full picture because I'm a reporter and I'm taking a side of a certain group of people, and my story is about them. So it's my choice to report on, you know, on communities that are left behind this whole oil development. So, but it's not really, you know, it's not the full picture of how things are.
what I noticed living the book through is that the most desperate faces are the old people's faces. Old people are miserable, old people are quite lost in this book, yes? With children, for example, they are playful, they are joyful, they could be this and that. With the sort of, you know, the generation of yourself, for example, there are different pictures.
Am I the old or the child?
in between. But what I noticed, the most lost people are the elderly people. How do you explain it?
Well, I think that has to do, I mean, for Azerbaijan and Georgia, this being part of the Soviet legacy, I think sort of elderly people have more difficulties finding a place for themselves. Just because Soviet Union is over and they used to have a job back then, and now this whole clash between the two worlds, they fell in this gap, and they can't seem to find a way out, and that's probably why a lot of the elderly people are having a difficult time.
And in order not to monopolize my right, to ask you questions, I'll open now the floor for the questions. But last question from me.
Okay.
Last question from me is about the. What was the question?
You promised it's the last one.
Yeah, promised the last one. Maybe I'll come back with my question. So let me open up the floor for the questions, and let's start with Tom De Waal, who is the great specialist on Caucasus in this country. Very good friend of both you and me. So yes, please, Tom.
Is this on? Thank you very much, Hamid. A privilege to ask the first question. I was so often when we deal with the Caucasus, we're dealing with too much geopolitics. And thank you, Rena, for giving us so much real human life. It was almost like looking at sort of Dickens's London in the Caucasus. I mean, it's extraordinary. In a sense, I think I do think the Caucasus suffers from too much top-down geopolitics, and we hear a lot about the oil boom, how good it is, but I think there are several problems with an oil economy. One is it supplies very few jobs. I think BP employs less than 2,000 people in Azerbaijan. It also suppresses other areas of the economy because of the fact that it sort of the currency becomes very strong and other bits of the economy become very weak. It's also dependent on a very volatile commodity, which is the oil price, going up and down. And I think, last but not least, it's a finite resource. And I think this is my question, really, because we know that for some time the next decade, this oil is going to start declining. And so I wondered how the people that you were talking to, whether they had any conception of a future for themselves or their country, whether they were just living in a present, scraping from day to day, or whether, because I suppose this is a question both for them and for us, because there's a feeling that these are the people who will be making the future of this country, and if they're discontented, I don't think they're going to want to build Denmark or Belgium in the Caucasus. They're going to want to build something rather different. And you, one of those people that actually bothered to spend time amongst these people, and I wonder whether you talk to them about the future and what kind of future they see for themselves.
I mean, the name of the book, coming back to the name of the book, Pipe Dream, it's not just a play on words. It does mean a dream that is almost impossible to achieve. So what I've discovered with the people that most of them live in this limbo of a hope, of some muffled hope that things will get better. For instance, refugees. I keep going back to refugee camps and talking to them, and I asked them, do you hope that you will ever get the lands back, that you'll ever go back home? They still hope, they still have this hope. It's been, over 17 years now of the conflict, and they still have this it's fading every day, but they have a hope. For the future, I think a lot of people have absolutely no control over what is happening. They have no control over the choices that the government is making, so they have no control over how much money is flowing through the pipeline, how much money is being being passed on to the people. So the gap between the very rich and the very poor is increasing every day, as Thomas noted. All these economic factors are true, unfortunately. But I think that, I mean, this story is precisely about the people who have no control. And this has been my general feeling going into the villages along the pipeline and talking to them. I have seen some improvement. I have seen schools, I have seen hospitals being built, I've seen irrigation ditches dug out, some improved life of farmers, but it's incremental, it's minuscule, it's not enough. And the challenges simply are too big for a small corporate responsibility budget of an oil company to cover. So. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the photography.
If you can introduce yourself, please.
I'm Phil Carrero. Thank you very much for the photography. It was very poignant. What I was struck, though, is the absence of any comment about the role of the government in this. You can criticize Western oil companies and other Western companies forever, but surely the licensing of this and all the rest of it goes back to the government. And what responsibility is the government taking to use the revenues that come from this to actually improve the life of the people?
I don't know if you were here earlier, but I said that I am not blaming the oil companies. In fact, it's not their job to fix the problems of the people. It's the government's job to fix those problems. It's public sector's job. I mean, in Baku, things are happening. There are bridges being built, new roads. In fact, in that crisis year, the government has taken some steps to give jobs to, sort of low-income communities and people. And but it's just, again, there's unfortunately still a lot of corruption. Azerbaijan is, one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and the oil revenues are not trickling down as fast as they should. And as Tom DeWall also noted, it's just the nature of oil business. It doesn't employ a lot of people. Agriculture employs a lot of people, and unfortunately, most of the country is subsistence farming. It's not really farming for export as much. So the government is doing something, but I believe it's not enough. That's my viewpoint.
Yes, please. Gentleman over there. Oh, lady.
Oh, it's a lady.
Lady, sorry.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Reem. I was just wondering. Actually, I've been to Azerbaijan for work. Completely different area. I'm in finance.
Not oil?
Well, I'm in finance.
Okay.
It's kind of related.
Okay.
And obviously, I was just in Baku, and one of the impressions I got from the younger people that I met was that they were very proud of their country, rightfully, and what was happening, and Azerbaijan being put on the map, basically. But obviously, I was also wondering about how. I don't know if your book was published in Azerbaijan. I was just wondering how it was received, and if the people there actually saw your work.
No. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, the book hasn't made it to Azerbaijan yet. It's sort of been stopped at the customs point and not let in the country. Don't ask me why. Yeah. So, but unfortunately, I would have loved to see it in the shops. Also, it's the distribution problem once again, and there are many other technical reasons for that, as well as the censorship is one of the main reasons.
Yes, please. First, maybe a gentleman next to, yes, and then, yeah.
Me or?
Yes.
Hello.
Because microphone is
This time
closer
is
to
the
you.
gentleman.
Yes.
Yes, okay. My name's Charles Hart. I had two very quick questions. Did you travel the entire length of the pipeline?
I traveled from Baku to Ceyhan, yes, overland, but I flew to Istanbul, for example.
Okay.
I made several segments. I didn't do it all at once. I made several trips back and forth. Yeah.
And my second question, what photographic equipment did you use?
I used medium format cameras, 120 millimeter film. I used Rolleiflex and Mamiya and
So
Nikon.
All medium format,
No, there's some 35 millimeter as
The
well.
Nikon, yeah.
Nikon, yes.
but all black and white film.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Almost all of it, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman behind you. Thank you.
Thanks. Andrew Barry. I very much appreciated in your images, your focus on materials, on buildings, on pollution in various forms. And in the early part of your talk, you spoke about the environment of Baku. But actually, it was a very kind of your focus was primarily on the lives of people and on poverty. And there's an interesting contrast, I think, there with the way in which in Georgia the pipeline was politicized very much in environmental terms. A very strong environmental movement in Georgia, green alternative, very heavily involved in the politicization of the pipeline. I wonder, it intrigued me why it didn't seem to be an environmental political issue in Azerbaijan, and whether you could account for the absence of a kind of what seemed to me an absence of an environmental politics.
Well, overall in the country, yes, I agree. But it's for the pipeline itself. It's not. How do I say? It should not be accounted for the environmental problems that we have in Azerbaijan. These problems come from way before. They come from the Soviet era, from all these factories, all these oil lakes, sprawling dumps and things like that. So that's not because of the pipeline. I was just simply showing the region and the place where, the oil is flowing. But it did have some environmental problems in Turkey, as I mentioned, the bay, the Yumurtalık Bay, the tanker traffic, and people, the temperature of the waters rising, and fish eggs dying in those waters, and subsequently the fishermen losing jobs. In Georgia, it also went through some landslide-prone areas, and I went to a village in the mountains of Borjomi, where residents claimed that because of the pipeline, this landslides, basically the pipeline accelerated the landslide. I'm not an environmentalist, I cannot check it for 100%, but I saw the destroyed homes, I saw the people angry, frustrated, they were the people, and once again, my story is about the people, so.
Yes, please. Gentleman here.
Which one?
In the second row. Yeah. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Richard. First, congratulations. I think it's a really sensitive book. I really, even being a filmmaker, I saw some echoes of Antonioni, of his first films there. My question is about the relationship to the people as we were photographing them. What was the report, the reaction that they had as you were going along the pipeline doing your work?
Well, the way I work, I said that I work with medium format camera. It's a kind of camera that doesn't allow you to run around. So I don't run around. I spend hours sometimes. Sometimes I go back the next day with the subject. So I try to build a relationship. A lot of these are direct portraits. So people are obviously comfortable, and they don't mind me being there, and so I talk to them, I interview them, I have tea with them, I have omelette with them, and whatnot. So the neighborhood of Mahala, for example, I spent about 4 years walking around in that neighborhood, building relationships with these different people, and taking their photographs. So usually it's through close contact. It's not through a fleeting moment, but more building a contact with a person.
Yes, please.
Yes, my name is Robert Wallace. I may have missed the introduction of the festival, but if I did, maybe you can fill me in. But it looks like there's government support in the arts, or this may be completely separate from anything to do with government funding, but I'm just contrasting that with your remarks about the censorship or of the book itself, and whether you think that this is a direct decision to block this information from coming in, or is there a way that through the arts? No, I mean through the arts, that through exhibitions, for example, that I mean there could be an exhibition.
I'm hoping
and
to
awareness raising.
Yeah, I'm hoping to bring the book back to Azerbaijan. There's no conspiracy really. It's just it's mostly due to individuals. There are some individuals that are very progressive and some individuals that are not. So those individuals that are not very progressive held up my book, and the others are. I mean, for instance, the Ministry of Culture is very progressive, and I work a lot with them, and they even showed this work in the Venice Biennial, and you know so. It's not every government agency that thinks forward, unfortunately. I hope to have some exposure in Azerbaijan with this work. I don't know if it will happen, but I'm certainly hoping.
Here, maybe we can bring back once again Mr. Nasib Piriyev, who is the head of the Buta Festival.
That's
At the same time, he is the CEO of one of the oil companies.
Yes, this is the example of a responsible businessman.
He could tell you what's the sort of logic behind it.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Nasib.
He has a hard job, by the way.
I am from Azerbaijan, and commenting on your question, I can say that the people say that in Azerbaijan there are only a few fools, but they are very strategically placed. So you're right. There are a lot of people in the government who are progressive and would support a lot of the initiatives of the artists. But there are the other people too. This festival is a private venture, and it's been supported by private corporations that are now emerging in Azerbaijan, and the private sector is now starting to understand the value of the artists who outline the problems that we face. So I really wish that we have more and more projects. Please visit our website and come and see our other projects.
Yes, please, Vefa.
My name is Vefa. I mean, it's an admirable thing that you've done, Rana, and watching your film brought some tears into my eyes. My question is a very personal, maybe, question. What Baku do you belong to?
What, sorry?
Baku.
What Baku
Old
do I
or
belong?
new? Yeah.
Do I belong to? I'd say I'm in between. I'm very nostalgic of all these things. I don't want Mahala to you know, disappear. But at the same time, I understand, you know, you cannot stop progress, you know. I go to Irish bars too. So sometimes. Now I have a child, I can't go every time. But I think it's all, I always find myself sort of balancing between the two worlds. I'm definitely the new emerging middle class that Nasib is talking about, because, you know, as I said, I benefited from the oil boom, and there are people who did, and a lot of my friends did. And, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't look beyond this and see what's going on the other side. So.
Can I make this question even sharper? Recently in Baku, they've sort of demolished the building which was built by Nagiev during the first oil boom. Yes. And instead of that, they want to put another hotel or whatever, yeah, in front of in the seafront. What's your reaction to this kind of you know, replacement?
It's painful. I mean, the Mahala is about that. And in Mahala, they don't have those lush European homes that I'm talking about in this presentation. You know, this is where poor oil workers used to live 100 years ago. The same oil workers that work for the Nobels, the Rothschilds, and Rockefellers. This is their neighborhood. This is where they lived. And I'm even pained to see that going. You know, those little huts that are crooked. You know, there's now a major facelift of Baku. I don't know if any of you have been recently back home. It's quite frustrating because all the parks are closed for repair. All the buildings are being facelifted, but nobody's repairing Mahala. Mahala is sort of left to die, and that's you know, I see that, and you know, I feel pain for that. But I understand that it's just at the face of relentless progress, and there's just nothing you can do.
Yes, please. Yes, yeah.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Short. Hi. Rena, wonderful photographs. Thank you. I just wondered, your slideshow kind of zooms to the picture of the the girl with hair
In the
falling in
end,
front of her
yes.
face. Just wondered if you could expand a bit about when you met her and about that little girl. Thanks.
She was a refugee, and I met her in Sabirabad, which is a very big refugee camp in the south of the country. And she's been living there since she was born. The thing about the numbers of refugees that is the saddest thing, that they're increasing. And the reason why they're increasing is because the new children are being born into this nation of refugees. They're being born in the camps, and they're also gaining the status of a refugee. So unfortunately, instead of diminishing numbers, we get increasing numbers, even though on paper they're not increasing, but in reality they are, because these children go to refugee schools, they still are considered refugee. There's a term, gachkunlar, in Azeri means refugee, so they're like a separate nation. And it's growing, the numbers are growing. That's the saddest thing.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name's Tony Stevens, and I think we got a very clear picture from your presentation about exactly what was fueling the pipeline. My question really comes around the issue of hope, and the hope that's been sustaining these people, like you said, for the last 70 years. It's being eroded, but what's been fueling their hope all this time?
How can you kill hope? I mean, it's quite difficult. I think it's human nature. Where, I think at large people are hopeful and are born optimists. At least I think, judging by my 3-month-old daughter, she's definitely born an optimist, and I think she has a lot of hope. But I mean, it's quite difficult to really hammer down the hope. So I think that's what's been happening with these people. They're simply living and waiting. Plus, there's always this propaganda or some things going on. There's always the next article, Azerbaijan and Armenia are in talks again. The conflict will be resolved. And then there's the momentum, and then it dies again. And Tom probably can comment on that. So, and it's been going on for 17 years like that. And whether this conflict will be resolved or not, I don't know. Tom, do you know? Ask journalists, ask politicians. They don't know. I mean, it's a big question, and it's keeping the people in the limbo, and it's one of the most traumatizing things for the nation. I think it's just to kind of always wait for some movement on something big like this. And I mean, I visited the front lines. I visited the villages where, for instance, there's a picture of one woman in this presentation. She lives literally 30 meters from the sniper fire of the people on the other side. So she lives in between, and the people are not going away because they're afraid if they leave, then there's going to be more territory lost. And there's Azeri soldiers on one side, Armenian soldiers on the other side. In between, there's a minefield. Shepherds graze their sheep, and the sheep runs out, goes into the minefield. Shepherds goes to fetch the sheep and gets blown up on the mine. I mean, these things happen. We could hear the explosions, of the training explosions, the ceasefires being broken every month, if not more often. So, I mean, it's a big question. I don't know. Can you comment on this as an expert on Caucasus conflicts?
Yes, please, Tom.
That's a pretty difficult question. We also have
very difficult.
We have Mark Grigorian sitting next to me from Armenia, so maybe he'd like to comment as well.
I could sit here and he could sit there, and you'd be in between, and
but
we'll sort it out with a song.
Absolutely. I mean, to come at it sideways, one of the things I loved in your presentation was the wedding in Marneuli.
Yes.
And I think, actually, when it comes down to it, so many people in the Caucasus have so much in common, culturally, socially, and in some of these mixed regions like southern Georgia, you have Armenians and Azeris
living together, yes,
intermarriage, lots of trade, and so on. I think there's a deeper problem, which is that these states, modern Armenia and Azerbaijan, were born out of this war, and they find it hard to let go of the symbolism of either on the one side victory and on the other side martyrdom on the Azerbaijani side. And outsiders occasionally try and push them and say, think a bit more about the future, not about the past. But there's not really enough incentive for these two governments actually to move forward. The risks of moving forward are actually quite great. Having said that, I think we are seeing one or two positive signs. You have the Turkish-Armenian rapprochement, which is very unpopular in Azerbaijan, but could potentially be good for the whole region. So we have one or two positive signs. Russia being a bit more constructive. I'm not holding my breath, but I think maybe things are moving a bit further away from war, if not towards peace. I don't know if Mark wants to add anything.
No, I don't want to add anything because I agree both with Rena and you.
Thank you.
I wish it was that simple.
Questions? Yes, please. Yes, please.
So basically it's make love, not war, yes? Is that what you're saying? Let's have weddings, mixed Caucasus wedding.
Yes, please.
Yes, think about
As a regular visitor to your website, Rena, I know that you visited a lot of other regions of the world and a lot of other areas that are challenged. And given your unique experience in photojournalism of traveling along a pipeline and meeting all those communities, I'm curious if you notice anything unique about the people in your photojournalism in that area as opposed to places like Egypt or Afghanistan or some of the other places that you visited.
Well, every story is unique, and every story has its own approach, and the people, they're all different, and they all have fascinating stories to tell. So in that sense, I wouldn't say that's my favorite story over this. I get usually the reason, basically, if I've gone 6 years making a story, I better be motivated, so people motivate me for different reasons in different places. I mean, I went for 2 or almost 3 weeks to Fergana Valley, which is in southern Kyrgyzstan, in Osh, and I was doing a story on women heroin addicts there, and they touched me as much as the people along the pipeline did. They had a lot to say. It's not really, I can say that, yes, I'm from Azerbaijan, maybe I should be touched more by people in Azerbaijan, but I think when you tell a human story, you abstract from nations, from nationalities, and from things like that. You really focus on the human element, and if you really care enough, you can do it anywhere, Africa or Timbuktu. I'm not sure. I mean, it's the actual story that really matters. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, just before giving mic to you, I'll reassume my sort of powers, as a moderator and agent of.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, agent of Rena. So books are here, and every picture, apart from everything else, has got a title to it, And titles are stories in their own. For example, Ilyas Alban, with his family at home in Otagi village, due to BTC construction, his family's plot of land was degraded, and is expected to recover its fertility only after 12 years. Turkey. It's a full story. Another one, for example, the next one. Aynur Gokçay with her husband Isa at home in the predominantly Kurdish village in Galabaz. Isa, along with 5 other villagers, was promised a job at Botas.
Botas is the contractor.
Botas is the contractor in Turkey, but never got it. So every picture, apart from everything else, tells the story. And I would like to ask, all these stories are quite sad, but what was the most funny story along this BTC line?
funny story.
Any of funny stories?
Wasn't the Irish pub funny? I thought it was.
Any other from rural areas? A folkloric story.
Well, the wedding was a funny story. Come on, give me the wedding.
Yeah, that's true.
That was actually hilarious. Yes. Yeah. What I didn't say, because I didn't want to talk too much to the picture about going back to the wedding altar of sneakers and dollar bills. The funniest part about it that I unfortunately didn't talk about was the father of the groom who brought it in. He said, "We fetched it from a local mullah, you know, the religious mullah, saying this will bring good luck and prosperity to the new family." With a vodka bottle on top. I mean, it was interesting. I thought it was very interesting.
Yes.
So we kind of retired to the car, you know, letting the feast boil in its own juices, you know.
Good. Yes, please. You were going to ask a question.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was remarkable. You spoke about trying to pick out the sort of human commonality along the pipeline, but I was wondering if you could make any comments on contrasts that you found between the three countries that you travelled through in terms of the impact on people's lives and compensation structures, you know, just direct impacts, how much these have been mitigated, whether you did notice any differences. And a related question to that, you mentioned that you'd been working on this project for 6 years and you've worked in the oil industry beforehand. I was wondering, over that time, whether you'd seen changes in people's lives, or you'd noticed that a change in attitude towards these people of the governments over that period of time that you've been working in.
I think most of the problems were quite common. For instance, in Azerbaijan and Georgia, there were a lot of land titling issues. So it was very difficult to determine who owns which land. You know, all these documents were sort of mixed up, and it was very difficult to see, you know, with farms not really being, you know, sort of pointed. It was very difficult to see who really owns that land, and a lot of people lost the land because some local governments simply just embezzled the compensation, you know, because someone's brother was getting married or something like that, and it happened because of this general mess with titles, land titles. So that was one of the big things, big problems that I've observed in Azerbaijan. And a bit of that in Georgia. In Georgia, there was a lot of disgruntlement of the pipeline going through Borjomi. So I talked about the landslide villages. In Turkey, a lot of sensitive issues with the Kurdish villages being kind of left, you know, out of the whole, you know, development. Some villages had mud roads. You know, they had no roads. Some villages had no schools. And some had no hospitals. And then again, at the end of the line, also the fishing communities. So all in all, the common factor is basically the governments don't care enough to make life easier for these people. And, you know, the expectations were quite high because, you know, there probably has been a lot of PR work along the line. And so when I visited some of the villages within the kilometer or two distance of the pipeline, they knew, they were talking about being promised jobs, like you read one caption, for example, from the contractor that was building the pipeline, and they never got them. So their expectations were not met in that regard. So there's really, I wouldn't say there was contrast, I would say there was common themes all through the of human rights violations, for instance, also. Over time, no. When I first started working, I'm 32 now. I started working at 19. You do the math. I'm not very good. From the time when I started working for BP to today, in Baku where I live, I think over 800 new high-rise buildings were built. Apartment prices went from about $15,000 to $20,000 per apartment to now $150,000, $200,000 for the same apartment in the same area. I mean, it changed dramatically. I mean, there's incredible change. There's been some changes, some positive changes in the regional sort of urban centers, but not really so much in the villages. Kind of new roads. Usually it's just one big road being repaved and named after the president. And so there's been some changes, but not really, you know, not, I would say, not instrumental. You know, very, very small steps being taken outside of Baku.
Yes, please. No, behind you. Sorry. Just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, Jay's short. Hi. I was just wondering, when it finally does get published in Azerbaijan,
It will never be get published in Azerbaijan.
It never would be. But if it was to be translated, would you choose the same title? Because it seems that the line between hope and a pipe dream is very thin, and it's very much a question of perspective. Do the people that you meet consider their lives and their hopes a pipe dream or a hope? Or
If there is an equivalent in Azeri language, which I can't think of right now, of pipe dream, I would probably call it pipe dream. The book came out in 4 languages. It came out in English, German, Spanish, and Russian. So in Russian, we called it "Linia жизни," which means lifeline, because there was just no equivalent of pipe dream in Russian. So we call it a lifeline because it's kind of a line and it's about lives. So it resonates the same sort of emotional feeling. So in Azeri, you would have to think. I would have to think about that. I haven't really come up with a title because I think it would be so incredible if it ever gets published in Azerbaijan. So I didn't even bother thinking of a title, but perhaps I should start now. I don't know.
Yes, please.
Hi, Rena. Thanks for the great
hello.
Thanks for the great presentation. I'm myself from Baku, and I was born and brought up in Mahalla as well, and in my great-great-parents' house. And our street is going to disappear soon as well, which is very sad. But as you say, because of the construction boom, we cannot change anything. But I want to give quick question, very simple one. Do you have any new projects in the pipeline? And if
in the
yes,
pipeline?
yes. If yes, what it's going to be about? Just very interesting.
Okay. Well, my very, very important project right now is my 3-month daughter. It's quite a handful, but she graciously allowed me to come here and be with you. Yes, the one project I have in mind is on environment of Baku city. I want to focus on Baku and the changes in Baku, and also a little bit outside of the Absheron, Baku is on the Absheron Peninsula, so I'd like to go to some of the villages there. Another project which is perhaps quite, it's quite different to that, is more ethnographic and it's more cultural. There is this village called Chronicle. It's way up in the mountains. It's at 2,300 meters above the sea. And it's a very beautiful mountain village that speaks a very unique language that nobody else speaks in the world. There are only about 1,000 people that speak this language. And I've been going there. I first went there in 2003, then I went back 2006 and went back in 2009 recently. I would say was it probably 4 or 5 months ago I went back. So I'd like to go back again and maybe do a sort of a book about Chronicle, because it's just so unique and so beautiful. It will be very different from this. Yeah, it's color. It's color. Yes, color. Lots of color. It's very, very, very bright colors there. If I were to do a tourist book, I would do Chronicle. This is not a tourist book. So it's not meant to be.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Just one question, Rena. I've just bought your book. It looks wonderful, but there are certain pages that are completely blank. Is that because I have gotten a copy of it, which
No, don't worry.
Was it supposed to be like that for a reason?
Yeah. It's just to give you a bit of breathing space.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that.
You get overwhelmed by pictures sometimes.
Okay.
So just you can, and then next one.
Thank you very much. But because you did it in some places and not in others, I wasn't sure.
Some of them completely white, some of them completely black, but it's just for breathing.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, please. Yeah, in the middle, please, and then you. Yes, please.
My name's Ian. Given that you worked on this for 6 years, can you talk about what surprised you?
What surprised me? Everything surprised me. Well, it surprised me in some of the areas where I've been. The stories were so fascinating. It surprised me that nobody else went in and did it. Like this fishing village in Turkey, when I came in, they said, you were the first journalist to come in and interview us. That was very surprising. It surprised me that the people opened their doors to me, a total, complete stranger. In the presentation, you saw this one picture of a man and his dying mother. That was incredible experience. I was just walking down, and he invited me into his home at one of the saddest, the most intimate moments of probably of his life, and that was incredible. Once when I was walking on Mahala, there was this one lady that stopped me and said, "Do you remember me 2 years ago? You took my picture." And I was like, oh, really? Oh, wow. And she invited me, and we had omelette and, grapefruit. And I met her daughter. And it's amazing the generosity of these people and how they were happy to invite me in. And they're very hospitable. And I constantly get surprised by that because, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I could open the door to a complete stranger. And they did, so it's amazing.
Yes, please. Here, please. Yeah. And then.
Rena. Rena, sorry, thanks so much. We haven't actually met. My name's Harry, and I run Host Gallery.
Oh.
So
Hello.
I just wanted to make sure it got mentioned that Rena's show is going to be open next week. It opens on Thursday evening, and everyone's welcome to come to the private view, which would be fantastic if you can make it. So do Host Gallery, Honduras Street in London. But yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's worth seeing the prints, everyone. I think you'd enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please, here, and then there, yes. Yeah.
It's just a technical question about when you're photographing these people. Obviously, you're having intimate moments, and how do you get around the issue, obviously, for a book, rather than current affair news reporting where things like model releases are overlooked, but how do you approach the issue of model release and or possible property release for areas that need that before publishing your books?
If I asked for a model release from every single person I photographed, the project would have been 66 years, not 6. It's very difficult. Usually when you come up to a person, you say, "Please sign this," they will not even talk to you.
Sure,
I mean, it's just impossible. To me, a model release is basically a person saying, "Yes, you can take my picture." That's a model release. I cannot go around with
But how is that viewed by the publishers? That's
for publishing because
it's becoming a very fine line these days.
Yeah, I know. In fact, in Azerbaijan, they passed a law that you are not allowed to take a picture of anyone. Basically, if you're on the street taking a picture of a building and next to the building there's a group of people, you have to ask every single person in that group if you can take a picture. And if you don't do it, it's illegal to take a picture. So me as a photographer, it's constant frustration for me to work in this kind of conditions. And I've been lucky with the people there. And I told them what it's going to be. I told them, I'm doing a story about it and it's going to be published. Are you okay with that? And they said yes. In fact, the fishermen in Turkey, they were hoping that the story will be told. This book is basically, it's giving these people an opportunity to tell their story to others. It's not really, I hope I'm not abusing them in any way. you know.
Yeah, sure. No, I wasn't.
You don't make a lot of
alluding
money
to
on
that.
photo books either.
I wasn't alluding to that. I was just saying from the publishing perspective.
From a
'cause
publishing perspective, yeah, it's
I mean,
just
even to license pictures for photo agencies these days, they expect all kinds of releases, which
in the
very hard to
ideal
offer them
world,
sometimes.
yeah, in the ideal world, you want to do this, but it's just impossible. It's impossible. In reality, I was never able to do it. I mean, I've tried, but I've never succeeded.
Can I thank you too, because that was the question which I forgot, you know, to ask.
Oh, thank God.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, please. Yes, please.
How many of the subjects in the photographs are likely to see the photographs that you've taken? And I'm often asked by people whether they might be able to see the finished product, and I've tried to make an effort to do that.
Yeah. In fact, when I was working for when I was not a photographer, when I had an office job, I was working for, I think, USAID, a U.S. Agency for International Development. I was taking pictures and working in an office for about 3 years. And that was the time when I was taking pictures of Mahala. So to me, photography was, it was certainly, I wasn't an amateur because I was very passionate about it. I was not a professional because I wasn't making money on it. So I was sort of in between. And what I did was I went to the darkroom, I printed the silver prints, and I went back and I gave them to the people. So I don't do that now. It's just simply impossible for me to do it now, as in my professional life. But the woman who remembered me, she had her picture. The man was his mother, he had his picture the next day. And yes, I tried to, in Chronicle, this village that I visited several times, each time I bring a stack of pictures to them. They probably have a local museum by now with my pictures. I even brought in my magazine publications where Chronicle was published, and they were very happy. So I try, but I can't go back to everyone, of course, obviously. It's impossible, but I try. I do it less and less now because simply too many stories, too many people, too much going on, so it's harder.
Perhaps you could place a copy of the book in each town.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, at least that. Yeah.
So a couple of last questions, and then we should finish by that. Yes, please. A couple of last questions. There were people here. No? No. No questions.
Just thank you.
No, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, I've started our conversation by comparing radio to photography, talking about the immediacy of both arts. I was trying in vain to sort of, to make radio similar to photography. But as my granny, who lived in one of the mahallas of Tashkent, said, it's rather than hearing 100 times, it's better to see once. So thank you very much for giving this chance of seeing once.
Thank you.
Thank you.